Pakistan has lots of experience in negotiating an IMF program and also trying to meet all the conditionalities the IMF program brings with it, particularly when we are always in a problem of balance of payment crisis, current account deficits, and fiscal deficit. So there is a set pattern which we follow, and then we always achieve a certain level of stability, and this stability is normally at a very low growth. I think we need some reforms in which we can change this economy into a market economy, where the market takes charge of pricing and resource allocation, and the survival of the fittest is put into place. Our political parties are, when they come into government, they really don't have a plan. But as soon as they come into government, then politics is a politics of patronage. It is all about patronage. Pakistan's economy needs lots of diversification. And one way of diversifying the economy is to really have some value chains in every district of Pakistan, which is competitive in the global markets. And these could be agriculture, these could be manufacturing, it could be minerals, there could be lots of things.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Economic Angle with Dr. Usman Chauhan. It is my pleasure today, as host of this new show, to welcome my guest, Dr. Salman Shah. He has a long term expertise in Pakistan's economy. He has served as caretaker finance minister. He has been an advisor. इनका बहुत वसी तजर्बा है और इनकी एक बहुत गहरी नज़र है पाकिस्तान की मईशत पर तो मैं इनको शामिल गुफ्तगू करते हुए एक बाइश से इफ्तिखार समझूंगा वेलकम डॉक्टर साहब
Shukriya ji.
तो डॉक्टर साहब let's go back 3 years or so when the Russia-Ukraine war started and things became very difficult for many emerging markets including for Pakistan and we worked our way from that period of crisis to today. Can you narrate in your experience how that time has passed?
I think that since we have had almost, this is the 25th IMF program, so Pakistan has lots of experience in negotiating an IMF program and also trying to meet all the conditionalities which the IMF program brings with it, particularly when we are always in a problem of balance of payment crisis and on the current account deficits and fiscal deficits. So there is a set pattern which we follow, and then we always achieve a certain level of stability, and this stability is normally at a very low growth. And the reason for that is that our economy is very inward looking. It does not compete in the global market like China or even India, and it is dependent on domestic markets and a lot of protection. And also, we have very high tariffs, etc., with protection and all that. So the question really is that, and whenever the international prices of commodities go down, because we are very dependent on oil, particularly oil and food products, Pakistan's economy starts to function, and you can also see some mid level growth in it. But really, the challenge is that we have to get out of this cycle where we get stability, and then whenever we try to go towards growth, we end up again uh, with lots of deficits. And the way to do that is to change the inward looking economy, which is highly controlled by the bureaucracy, and which, if you look at from agriculture to industry, even services, uh, the economy is controlled by the bureaucracy in a very heavy handed manner. So I think we need some reforms in which we can change this economy into a market economy, where the market takes charge of pricing and resource allocation, and the survival of the fittest is put into place. Now, that kind of transformation we attempted it in President Musharraf's time, but before we could do everything, there was a change in government and lots of reforms were reversed. And since the last 15 years, we have not been able to bring out meaningful structural reforms. And in my mind, the in a very macro sense, we have to convert our economy from a bureaucratic economy to a market economy. And we have to put in place the pillars of market economy, which means a lot of competition, which means removing barriers to entry, which means removing barriers to exit, and let uh, the fittest become large. And therefore, I think this transformation, I don't see even the present government undertaking that kind of transformation, because it would need reducing the role of the bureaucracy, it would mean reducing the number of ministries, it would mean a lot of deregulation, it would mean a lot of liberalization, and of course, privatization, which we have been unsuccessful in carrying out. And also, in the context of a market economy, our major sectors are energy, which is totally dominated by the government, then agriculture to a large extent, all pricing decisions are dictated by the government, and movement of product is controlled by the government. And then, even in the financial institutions, they really don't compete with each other and they follow the dictates of the central bank.
Thank you for that comprehensive answer, Dr. साहब आपने बड़ा मुफस्सिल जवाब दिया है पस मंज़र पेश करते हुए. But आपके ज़ाती तजर्बे में, having sat in the capacity both as advisor, as caretaker finance minister, etc., what is the actual experience like when you try to argue for these reforms and you face resistance from vested interests? What is the actual experience like जब आप एक ये मतलब इस्तेलाहात पेश करते हैं और उनके जवाबात आते हैं और एक कशीदगी होती है? Can you describe what it is like, with perhaps not too much precision, but just explain what the forms of reticence are when you present your reforms?
I think our political parties are, when they come into government, they really don't have a plan. They may have a manifesto which has a lot of flowery things in it, but as soon as they come into government, then politics is a politics of patronage. It's not a politics of running an economy or a market economy or deregulation. No, nothing to do with reforms. It is all about patronage. Number two, every minister has his own silo in which he operates, and he does not like to reform where his power would be reduced. That every bureaucrat, by definition, does not want to reform because it reduces their power. And finally, I think the performance evaluation or performance measurement is not there, and even the elections are not really a means of disciplining the political parties who have not performed. It takes a long time. So I think the system has kind of, it's a fossilized system, but it gets strengthened by the vested interests of politicians, bureaucrats, and the elite. In a way, those elites who can manipulate the system, they benefit from it. So what we have to do is, like, many leaders in China. We had Deng Xiaoping, who was able to really bring in a market economy in China, which was the communist state which was heavily controlled by the Communist Party of China, and there Deng was able to reduce or the role of the Communist Party in making actual decisions of the economy, and he brought in the very successfully the market economy in China, and today we see it is a market economy, and even though they have a very large public sector, the role of private sector is becoming more and more important. So I think we need a very comprehensive uh, kind of economic transformation strategy. It has to involve the political leadership. They have to direct it, and then they have to actually cut down their own interference in the economy, make the economy, the structure smaller. For example, if we have 50 odd ministries at the federal level, we don't need more than 20. And so we need a lot of consolidation. We need to reduce the number of ministries, the number of ministers, and we need to ensure that the economic ministries work on the same agenda. So whether it's the planning division, the finance division, the commerce division, and for that matter, the agriculture and industry, they have to be working on the same agenda of making Pakistan a very competitive economy and be able to compete in the world economy. And I think that is very critical if we want growth to take place without destabilizing the balance of payment crisis, which we always face whenever we start to go for growth.
Makes perfect sense, Doc Sab. That makes perfect sense. So when we cite the Chinese example, sometimes people don't appreciate it as much because they think that China is so culturally different, historically different, geographically different. But the truth is that even within South Asia, with the same legacy of British laws, the same system, very similar genetics, very similar geography, we've managed to see reforms happen, for example, in Bangladesh or in the former Ceylon, Sri Lanka, or in even some states in India. We see it. So it's not as if this same metastructure that we inherited, so did they, and yet they have moved on. So what, Dr. Saab, if you can elaborate more, you've talked about the politicians, you've talked about the bureaucracy, but what makes this system cling on to the colonial antecedents more than other places with the same inheritance? What is it about that?
I think that when we started off with 50 years ago, after the birth of Bangladesh, we started on the wrong footing. And we really laid the foundation of a very bureaucratic state by nationalizing major industries and banks in the country. And with a stroke of the pen, we extended the role of the bureaucracy from being just an administrative unit into an economic management unit. And they did not have the skills or the background to be able to really manage the economy. And like other socialist countries, it was also a failure in Pakistan. And to a certain extent, we have not been able to roll back this creeping bureaucratization of the economy. And over the years, the government has, the different governments which come into place, they want to use the same system because they have a very short term horizon and they don't have the time to undertake very major reforms. And none of their leaders is really a reformer. So their agenda is not for reform. The only problem is that now we are one of the poorest countries in the world. Our per capita income is like 150th in the world, and we are the fifth largest country. And basically, we we have not lived up to our expectations because we have a very young population, and we are the fifth largest population in the world, and we should be a manufacturing hub like a mini China, and which we are not. So I think the time has come for the political parties to come up with their plans, and whenever the next elections are held, it should be held on the basis of the reform agenda of each political party.
Doctor, that makes perfect sense to me. And there's a particular term you have used, which is the administrative units. It always makes me think a little bit larger, which is to say, I end up thinking about the federating units in a lopsided federation. And you were there during the time when the 18th Amendment was passed, which was the most impactful in terms of trying to deal with the center provincial relationship. So the federating units versus the center. So now quite a bit of time has passed. 2 decades almost have passed since the 18th Amendment. So you have some horizon of looking back at how successful or unsuccessful that amendment has been. So, from a governance perspective, looking back now, do you think it has worked? If it hasn't worked, why hasn't it worked? Or to what extent? I would like your commentary on the 18th Amendment's role for the economic perspective, particularly.
I think it's a classic case study of a good idea being misused again for vested interests. And what I mean is that under the 18th Amendment, lots of powers were given to the provinces, and along with the power, it was money was also given, and what it meant was that federal government will get out of certain areas, and and the provinces will pick up those areas. Unfortunately, the federal government refused to give up areas which were devolved to the provinces, and hence we have, instead of reducing the government footprint, we ended up increasing the government footprint. And secondly, the provincial governments never really went to the local government and devolved to the local government. So now Pakistan has 168 districts, and development really has to take place at the district level. Competitive advantage has to be created at the district level. But we are always looking at the federal government taking a very large role in all of this. And for them, districts probably don't even exist, and development has never been taken to the doorsteps of the people, because the people live in the districts, and every district has to be modernized. It has to be connected globally. It has to have its ecosystem of investment and production and supply chains and value chains, which nobody has ever paid any attention to.
Then, Dr. Saab, if I take your argument further about the importance of local government, that you may hear this increasingly. I personally am also a proponent of this, that there should not be just four provinces and a handful of territories. There should be, for such a massive country in terms of population, perhaps 12, 15 different provinces, or let's say sub-federating units of equal size roughly, with none being too large relative to the others. But you are well positioned to comment on this from the politics side as well, having dealt with other politicians and having seen the panorama of Pakistan, plus the administrative efficiency things. Do you think that is a good idea, or do you think it will just massively duplicate every ministry across so many more extra provinces? What sort of scenario do you envisage?
I think in the present setup, provinces are not conducive to splitting themselves and making more provinces. And in my opinion, if we start doing that, we'll create a lot of problems, political problems, and we may not be able to achieve our objectives. But I think certainly every province can be asked to make sure that the local government, the district level governments, they have the means of making economic decisions. They have authority on revenues, and they can plan and actually implement development in their own areas, which basically means that the federal government and the provincial government at max should be looking at an overall strategy of competitiveness or productivity, but actual implementation at the district level should be with the district government. And I think it's doable. It is because you have your elections also on the basis of the districts, and you have district commissioners, and so you have the civil service, you have the election system, and now you have to empower the local government so that it can start to make its own decisions. And the only thing which you would like to do is that the local governments actually are aligned with a growth strategy in which federal government and provincial governments are partners, and that growth strategy is then being implemented at the local level. So it can be done, and it can be done without really making any major changes in the constitution.
Right. Dr. Saab, one final question, because I think it is very important. You described the, let's call it the IMF cycle, some stabilization, then some growth, and so on, and it happens repeatedly. Now it seems like we are not following exactly previous cycles because there is some stimulus put in once the governments feel that enough austerity has been done. It seems like now there is still a much longer austerity paradigm than previous cycles. For example, the state bank having still very high real interest rates and that sort of austerity thing still in place. Can you comment on this transition from austerity to growth? Should it be there? Should we keep austerity? How do you see this unique program this time?
I think we'll have to carry on with the austerity until we really are able to implement structural reforms, which basically means smaller government, deregulation, liberalization, privatization. All these things have to be simultaneously done, and then the devolution of power to the local level and empowering the local supply chains. I mean, Pakistan's economy needs lots of diversification. And one way of diversifying the economy is to really have some value chains in every district of Pakistan, which is competitive in the global markets. And these could be agriculture, these could be manufacturing, it could be minerals, there could be lots of things. So the thing is that we have to get rid of the overwhelming presence of the federal government and the provincial governments.
Makes sense. Makes sense, Doc Sab. I would like to thank you very much for the time you have spared. इतने मुख्तसर वक्त में इतनी मुफस्सल गुफ्तगू जो हुई है, we have shed light on many, many important issues, and I think it's the sort of blueprint we need for conversations about the economy. So, Doc Sab, I extend my gratitude to you for your time in the first episode of this new program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to our viewers. Aapka bahut shukriya sunne ka. And I hope that we have more conversations of this caliber in the future. Khudafiz.